just wanted to thank you, Teresa, for joining us here at the Expo. Teresa Cage is an author of 6 books across several different genres. And, she has so much to say about the world of writing as her natural outlet. And she has her most recent book where she talks about the political world and the different worlds through Freedom Dies. So I encourage you to take a look at that. And she's always the writer. She creates worlds within worlds, even as a child, writing short stories for her friends and family. And then later she began to create a whole world of fiction around special Christmas stories that she shared with her grandchildren. And these ultimately became a collection of bedtime stories for the Christmas holidays. And she's an avid reader. And she's worked and been influenced by some of the greatest names in literature. Ray Bradbury, chief among them, taking some workshops with him. And I ran into her at the Romance Writers Association and was just enthralled with her ability to help authors create worlds within worlds, if you will, world creation within your novels. So without any further ado here, I would like to turn it over to you, Teresa.
Thank you, Stephen. That was a very kind introduction. Hello, everyone. Today we're going to talk about world building. That has got to be one of the biggest problems that writers have, is how do I make sure that the world I've built will hold up if I say want to do a sequel or people begin to question what I've done. And so what I've done is, you see my lovely little dragon here, no matter what you're writing, your setting, where you have placed your story is critical. I always think of it as another main character. And I like to call this From Dungeons to Dreaming, Crafting Immersive Worlds for Stories and Novels. And you'll see my fascination with dragons. And that's because I started crafting whole worlds when I became a fan of Dungeons and Dragons. This was a game designed by Gary Gygax and David Aronson in 1974. And I bet that seems like a long time ago. But the two of them created this game. It was going to be a teaching game to help students learn to map, to read, to write, to think creatively, and develop their math skills as well. But somehow, I don't know if some of you remember, but there became that scare that Dungeons and Dragons was demonic and children shouldn't play it. And it just about broke Gary's heart, I believe. But working with Dungeons and Dragons, I became a huge fan of creating worlds. And I created my own world, the world of Priya. And one of the things you're going to see as we go through this material is that it's important to bring your world to life. You can't just create a map and a couple of cities. You have to have a background for it. You have to have the history. What happened 20 years ago? What happened 2,000 years ago? Who are the important people in your city? What's culture like? What do they wear? What's their traditions, their art, their music? Really hear it when you think of their music. And also religion. I've read books lately where they've been science fiction set in a magical realm, and they talk about the religion, but then nobody knows who's in charge. There's no definitive gods and goddesses and backstories for those. You need to provide all of that in order to create a truly immersive world. When you do transform your imagination into a world, you're going to create a world that just sort of springs off the page for you. And I am going to have a handout for you that will have so many resources that will allow you to get started immediately. When you begin to transform your imagination into a world to put your characters in, the setting is there for you. You're going to discover that these resources are going to make it so easy for you to build the world. Start out with my first resource. It's a YouTube video, and it's a great one on how to create fictional histories for your book, no matter what genre you write in. I've used this information in all genres that I write in, and I'm one of those authors who's never found a genre. World Building Guide, Jerry Jenkins. Jerry Jenkins, of course, wrote the Left Behind series, which was a phenomenon in, I guess, the 90s, I believe. Fantasia Archive is another great site. World Anvil, or also known as World Anvil Teacher, because there's a younger edition, and you can create your world there. It's also a great site to produce a map of your world. 8 Steps to Constructing a Fictional World History, and Dabble Writer. Dabble Writer is one of my favorite sites, and this includes their university. Dabble Writer got their start a number of years ago. It was just basic storage for people who wanted to write books. And then they developed their program to the point that today, if you write on it, there's a place for you to put character notes. You can store all kinds of information about your world. So it's right there at a tab while you're working on your book. You just click over it. You don't have to dig through notes or dig through notebooks. It's right there. D&D Beyond is a great site. I know everybody thinks D&D can't possibly have anything to do with writing, but that gave me my start. Creating stories for my friends when we played Dungeons and Dragons. It gets those creative juices going. And then if you become the dungeon master, meaning it's your job to create the next adventure, you really have to start thinking about what you're going to do. So, in order to help you just a little bit, I've created a system that will allow you to take a very simple 20-sided die, and I've got a whole bunch of them. If I were there with you, I'd be able to give you a few. But by rolling these dice, I can create my entire world. For example, here's a lovely chart. And this is a great way to start your world. So if I roll my dice, I come up with a 9. So the first thing I'm going to put on my map is a lake surrounded by trees and rocks. Sounds kind of cool, doesn't it? And if we're doing utopian or apocalyptic, those trees could be very different. In my world on Priya, the trees are crystal, and the leaves in the breeze create such amazing music. It's part of where the magic of the world comes from. So I would continue this, and I could keep rolling on this chart, or maybe you want to create your own charts. You can create charts that you put down the things that you want for your cities, for your towns, for your entire world. Do you want a lot of rivers? Do you want a lot of oceans? What is your world like? And as I'm writing these down, I'm also kind of taking notes. Now, I'm a terrible map maker. So for me, in order to make a map, I have to use some of these wonderful programs we're talking about because my maps are very, very childish. In fact, I teach fifth grade normally, and my kids laugh at me. Anyway, you'll have these so that you can play around with them. But this is the first one. I also gave you some emergency plot bunnies because nobody can ever refuse a plot bunny. They're great to have around if you get stuck and you don't know what to do. Again, 20-sided die, you roll it. Oh, I got an 18. So I'm traveling through England, or if there's no England in my world, it might be the equivalent of an English town. And the main character accidentally finds a very strange castle. And again, it doesn't have to be our England. It can be your England. Here are some settings, just simple little things, not a world building scenario. But as you can see, you've got small towns, farms, a movie theater, a flower shop, or I love the deserted road with nothing around it. And then I added a couple of wild cards that are kind of fun, where you then get to roll the dice either once more or twice more to pick extra settings that you need to use in your story. And those are always a lot of fun to do. And again, please, I want to make it clear. This is a concept. It's an idea. So this is something that is so easily fitted to whatever you're writing. You can make it fit a utopian society, an apocalyptic setting, a water world, so many different kinds of things. The most important thing to remember as you're working on this is that fill in those gaps. Don't leave the history of your world unknown. Don't have magic if you don't have the gods and goddesses to go along with it. Maybe your world is even long past magic, but you might still have the stories about the gods and goddesses around. Maybe there's someone named the Wanderer who shows up at incredible moments and helps people out. So make this yours. Again, I want to reiterate the history of your world, culture. Don't forget, how did they get writing? Where did it come from? Or do they just tell stories? What's their religion? What's their art? What are their traditions? Think about the science of your world. I read a book a long time ago about a world tree, and it was just a tree. And it was enormous, and nothing worked as our world. And that had to have taken a lot of research to develop an entirely different science system. How about education? Is there any? And create a map of your world, even if it's a silly, childish one like I would make. And your map should include famous landmarks, rivers, cities, mountains. Name everything. Because that one mountain you forget to name, guarantee that's the one you're going to end up on at some point in your story. What's the climate like in your world? What famous individuals, living and dead, are from your world? What's the flora, the fauna, the people's worldview? And don't sell that one short. Think about, do they know that there are other people in the world? Do they know that there are worlds beyond their own? What do they value? What are their morals? All of that with just a little dice. And if you're ever in a problem and there's more than one kind of dice, this one's a 4-sided dice. So maybe you only have 2 or 3 or even 4 choices that you want to pick from. That will help you. There are 8-sided die. And of course, the traditional 6-siders. Don't be afraid to use this system. It has helped me through all of my books at some point or another. World building is easier than you think, but it's tougher than you thought to actually stop working on it. But don't, for goodness sakes, go down a rabbit hole. I have a bad habit of doing that when I research. I'll start researching and it's like, that's fantastic, but I've got to look again and I need another one. And pretty soon I've wasted an entire day on a tiny little 1 second in my book. So don't do that. Know when you've developed enough of your world for what your story needs. Stop already. You've got to work on your book. Thank you so much for listening to me. And if you need any help, contact me. There's my email. I return all comments, questions, concerns, and I definitely am always willing to help a fellow writer. Thank you again from the bottom of my heart. I hope you have a great conference. Enjoy yourself and learn all that you can. Bye for now.